Welcome back to Gloves Up Garage. I'm back to work on the 93 Cobra, the Fauxbra project. And I'm going to walk you all through some of the processes I have been working on with this car to get it back on the ground. So I put it up in the air initially because the owner asked me to change out the control arms. These aftermarket control arm bushings had deteriorated, they were falling apart, and then I also needed to fix the bottom side of the trans tunnel that I repaired in one of the earlier videos on this car. I've got some seam sealer here to fix that, and I need to put some paint and primer and stuff on it. So while I had it up in the air, go ahead and swap out control arms. Well, that was about 4 weeks ago now, because the control arms that he had provided to me were a set of factory control arms. And we put profane bushings into those, and everything went well with the installation. I'll throw some clips of that in here. And everything seemed to be okay as far as those control arms were concerned. Fast forward to 4 weeks ago when I started to put the control arms into the car, and this driver's side went in just fine. The upper control arms went in exceptionally great. Went over to the passenger side, could not get the control arm into the torque box. And I thought, okay, well, no big deal. I can shave down the bushing on the control arm and get it to go in there. These torque boxes have been repaired and reinforced before all the paint work was done on the car. I mean, this car has a lot of love, a lot of miles, and let's face it, a lot of hard launches on slicks and nitrous, so these torque boxes had some damage to them and they had been repaired. The factory control arms should go into place where these aftermarket control arms came out, and for whatever reason, that passenger side lower control arm mount, it just fought me and fought me and fought me. And I didn't want to record any of it because it was just the same process of trying to get the control arm into the torque box, taking it back down, putting it back in, hooking it to the rear end, getting the rear end up in there, hopefully getting some alignment out of it. And essentially what was happening is there's a bolt that goes through the torque box, through the control arm, actually from the inside of the car out, and then you put a nut on the outside. And I could not get that control arm to sit where the bolt would go through straight. It was up or down. There was really no indifference to it. So I thought, well, I could put a jack under the control arm to bring it up and get it in there, and it just turned into a huge debacle. And what I realized is there's something up with one of the control arms, the bushing or something like that. And the quickest and the easiest way to get this thing back on the ground is just grab another set of control arms instead of trying to source the bushings for these Mac control arms from back in the day. So he hopped onto American Muscle. We got a set of control arms to go on, and that's going to fix, hopefully, the whole debacle of the rear end. So stay tuned while I get these unboxed, and then we'll get them in the car. Guess I'll leave that open until we get it started. Let's show me. Now it'll go outside. All right, so we're moved over here in the bay. I'm gonna get the jack under here, bring this up a little bit at a time, and start setting my stands underneath the frame rails. All right, I got the car up in the air and the lower control arm is out. And you wouldn't believe me if I said these are brand new with 0 miles on them, but the bushings are just falling apart. There's a piece of it there. It just came off the front. This is why I've got to replace these control arms. Not that the control arms are bad, it's that the bushings are just completely rotten. All right, let's open up these control arms for American Muscle and see what we've got here. Pretty basic. These are going to be the lower control arms. These are the uppers. We'll pop one out, take a look at it, see what we got. Pretty nice. I'm impressed. The welds look pretty good. Something I did notice is they don't have the fittings to inject grease into them, and ultimately that's what caused those other control arms, the Mac control arms, to go bad on this car. He had put the wrong kind of grease in there, and it attacked the polyurethane or rubber bushings, whatever came with it, caused those bushings to just crumble apart just because the grease broke down the bushings. So these look really good. There's, like I said, there's no fittings in here. Very basic control arms. I mean, he's not going to go out and launch this thing on slicks or try to turn a fast lap time at the Nürburgring or anything crazy like that. We just want to put a little bit better control arm than what came with it from the factory. So there's the lower, one of the lowers, and it looks really good. So we'll take a look at one of the uppers now. Now I did change out the upper control arm bushing that is on the rear end. I put a Prothane bushing in there, and that one is going to stay on the rear end. I'm not going to worry about trying to swap it out. This should, in theory, go right over top of it on the rear end and shouldn't cause any issues. Again, really basic control arm, nothing too fancy. Welds all look good. Powder coat looks great. It does have a little bit of a burr right there, just kind of caught my hand, so I'll buzz that down with a Dremel and put a little bit of spray paint on it. You know, it's not terrible. And then it looks like we've got all our bushings. Yeah. So there's all those, which means this should be all of our hardware, which it is. Looks like we've got the sleeves, bolts, nuts, washers, all that, some grease in there too. Now I won't be reusing all of the hardware on that rear end, but I do need to reuse the front lower control arm bolts that go through the torque box to the outside of the car. This does have torque box reinforcements built into it, and when they did that, they provide a little bit longer bolt than what would come in this kit. So I'm going to get these assembled, get that all greased up and put together. That way I can take the factory control arms out of this and put in these aftermarket ones and cross our fingers that everything goes in smooth. All the bushings and sleeves went in very, very good. I probably could have put a little bit more of the lubrication on the bushings themselves to get them to kind of go into the control arms better, but
from what I remember, you're not supposed to lube these to the control arm itself. You're only supposed to lube the sleeve that goes inside. Speaking of that, looks like I've got some extra sleeves left over. I would imagine that 2 of these are probably for this end of the upper control arms, but that bushing's already been changed out on the rear end. Under there, you can see that bushing right there is a polyurethane bushing that has been swapped out. So I'm gonna get this stock control arm out that you saw me put those other bushings in, and then we're gonna start putting in these aftermarket American Muscle control arms and see where that gets us. And hopefully by the end of all this, the rear end will finally be back up into the car and I can start working on some of the other stuff that I need to get done. And with editing magic, these control arms are now installed. And it's taken me about 20 hours to do it. And I'm sorry I didn't get any footage. It would have been more beeps than anything else. And time lapse would have showed me taking the rear end in and out about 20 times. This was no fault to American Muscle. These control arms are an excellent option for your Mustang. And I'm not sponsored, but they are a good part from what I can tell so far. They went in easily, we'll say. The problem I ran into is this car has had a rough life, and these torque boxes are pretty rough. You can see the reinforcement that's up inside of this pocket. The bottom side has been welded on. It's just had a rough life, and they did what they could to get it repaired and beefed up. The upper control arms are in pretty decent shape as far as the torque boxes go, and they weren't as bad to get in once I got the lowers in. But the problem is when you take a rear end out, it never goes back in exactly straight, and that's the problem that caused me the most delay, honestly, was just trying to get the rear end straight, get one control arm on, swing around to the other side. Because if you don't do that, this will bind up as you're trying to put it back in. And that's what I kept running into. So again, no fault to American Muscle. Those control arms for 130 bucks or whatever they are, really good option. Better than the factory control arms with the Prothane bushings. That was a whole mess in and of itself. But they are finally in, and I can move on from here and get the springs in, get the sway bar back on, get the brake line hooked up. I had to loosen the exhaust to get to the bolts for the lower control arms. I can finally button this thing back up now. So for the control arms and the rear end, I'm done for now. I'm gonna move on to the next episode, which will be kind of finishing up that trans tunnel, putting the seam seal on the bottom side. I really won't be able to get good footage of it because of how tight it is to the transmission and exhaust underneath the car. So just take my word for it, that's gonna get done. Put a little bit of paint under there also once that seam sealer sets up. And then we can put this back on the ground and start to concentrate on the interior and finishing insulation and stuff on the inside. The main thing is just to get it back down on the ground for now so that I can move it around the shop. Still have the 93 Cobra. I'm gonna start on the quarter panel very soon. And then a lot of you all might have seen, or you might have been sent here by a link that I did on one of the SN95 forums about the 94 GT, where we're gonna trade that up until we get to a 26 GT 500. So if you've made it that far in this video, that definitely appreciate that. I do need to get started on that 94 GT. We're gonna do a video on getting it running so that I can pull it in here to the shop. And that's why I need to get this back on the ground so I can move it around. But then from there, we can see what all that car is going to need to get going. So if you are a new subscriber, thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload new videos. Hopefully going forward, it'll be sooner. Just work, life, a lot of stuff's kept me busy and I haven't had time to record stuff for you guys. So if you found this helpful, drop me a comment down below, hit the like on the video. If you like watching an old guy suffer through working on these cars, definitely drop a comment, a like, and let me know what you think. So for now, that's going to be it for this one. Remember to stay gloved up.